All right, let's get started then. Fantastic. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask a Scientist event here. And wanted to welcome you all because, well, we've got everybody here in the hall with us, but we've also got people listening in on Facebook and on Instagram as well, live. So there's people that are following us virtually right now. So welcome as well. And today, this session is a bit different. We're going to be running a Q&A session. We've been gathering some questions online as part of this, as part of the Ask a Scientist campaign. And the objective was really to try and build a bridge between what we're seeing here, academia and scientists, and the people that are working in the field, the people that have questions about agroforestry. So we gathered questions from AGROMIX's social media platform. So this project is run and is created and organized by AGROMIX project in collaboration with EURAF. And AGROMIX is a project that is looking to, or is currently working on 12 pilot farms in Europe in order to create research in agroforestry, but research that answers some practical questions that they develop in collaboration with farmers in order to help the farmers, to promote agroforestry, and finally they share all this information through various platforms. So they work in a co-designing participatory fashion. So yeah, that's I'm Dimitri. I forgot to present myself, and I'm co-host of the Regenerative Agroforestry podcast, and we interview farmers regularly in order to share to our audience, which are mostly farmers as well. We're farmers ourselves. So today, what's going to happen is I'm going to be asking various questions to a panel of scientific experts that are with us right now. And I'm going to present them shortly. I've got a big piece of paper with all of the achievements that they have that they've achieved in their career. So we're going to start with Patrick Worms over here. Welcome, Patrick, from Belgium. He's the president of EURAF, as most of us know over here, so of the European Agroforestry Federation. He's trustee and treasurer of the International Union of Agroforestry, a senior fellow of the Global Engineering Alliance, and a member of several advisory boards. Patrick studied genetic engineering and at the undergraduate and master's level at Leeds and Cambridge University. We've also got Anastasia with us, Pantera from Greece. She's professor of the Department of Forestry and Natural Environment Management, Agricultural University of Athens in Karpenisi, Greece. She has a doctoral diploma in agroforestry from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and a master in science degree from Purdue University in the USA on forest ecology and biology. We also have Bohdan Lojka from Czech Republic. Welcome. He's a professor at the Department of Crop Sciences of Prague. He pursues research in agroforest systems both in the tropics and the Czech Republic. His main research topics are domestication of agroforestry trees and the potential of agroforest systems for biodiversity conservation. He's chairman of the Czech Association of Agroforestry and the Czech representative of the executive board of the European Agroforestry Federation. And finally, we have Dagnija Lazdina from Latvia, who's online with us. Welcome. She is professor of the Department of Forestry and Natural Environment Management, Agricultural University of, sorry, that's the wrong person, apologies. Oh. She is a Latvian State Forest Research, Silava scientist, has a master in biology and graduated in forest sciences as a doctor of silviculture. Additionally, with a plant physiology background. She's been active in agroforestry research since 2011. So welcome everybody. Maybe we can start with a round of applause for them coming up and confronting all of our questions. So how's the session going to happen today? We're going to be asking each one of the scientists a question. We're going to be moving from scientist to scientist. And at the end of the session, we're going to be selecting from a basket from all the people that ask a question. We've got a little basket with their names. We're going to be selecting randomly one of the names, and we're going to be offering them products that come from the that come from the pilot projects of AGROMIX, including a pecorino cheese from Italy. We've also got some honey from Switzerland, and we've got some cakes like this from Switzerland as well. And also we've got, apologies, one more product. We've also got, yeah, sorry, the honey doesn't come from Switzerland. The honey is from Germany, and the cakes come from Switzerland. All right, and so at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to transcribe this session, and we're going to ask the experts to provide 1 or 2 references to each of the answers that they've provided. And they're gonna, with that, we're going to create a frequently asked questions document that's going to be available online on the AGROMIX website. So make sure you check that out afterwards. Yeah. So perfect. I think we can get started with the first questions. See if the presentation works. Okay, so the first question from Ines Balsa, Portugal. It was asked on LinkedIn, and this question is for Patrick. The question is, what is agroforestry and how is it related to permaculture? So I would also say, you know, how does agroforestry compare to other practices that we hear about, like regenerative agriculture, permaculture, etc.?
The easiest way to think of agroforestry is that in an agroforestry system, the trees work for their living. You don't just wait for them to grow and then you cut them to make some money. You exploit the ecosystemic services that the trees provide to do something else while they grow. You may do that to help your crops to grow. You may do that to help grass to grow, to deal with livestock. You may do it in a simplest system to feed pollinators to make honey. Agroforestry is just the combination of trees or shrubs, perennial species, permanent species if you like, with shorter-lived species such as annual crops, or sometimes permanent systems such as grasslands. How is that related to permaculture? All of these things, agroforestry and permaculture, are part of the broad family of agroecology. What they have in common is a way of looking at agricultural landscapes not as a blank substrate into which you pour inputs and seeds in order to gain a single product which you then sell, but to look at them as an ecosystem, an agroecosystem that you can help fructify, that you can help grow, that you can help work better so that you can glean some of those benefits. The beautiful thing about both permaculture and agroforestry is that if you do them well, you don't just do something that helps your own bottom line, but you also do something that provides services that the planet and the world will be thankful for, whether it's better biodiversity, whether it's more resilience to extreme weather events, slowing soil erosion, or putting carbon in the soil.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very succinct answer. Thank you very much, Patrick. Okay, the next question from Daniel Medicoa from Spain. It was asked through Instagram, and this one is for Anastasia. What is regenerative agriculture?
Okay, regenerative agriculture is actually, I would say it's a philosophy. It's a philosophical way of looking at the land, but as a general definition, you can say that the regenerative agriculture is actually a holistic land use management practice. In this management practice, you're looking for to close the carbon cycles in your field, in your land, and in the same time, you get the best and the healthiest soil possible. And of course, for the optimization of your crop. So it's this is why I characterize it as a philosophy. It's a philosophy that you're looking for the minimum inputs, for the maximum outputs, and it's practiced with a variety of actually uses. One of it, it's like the minimum or no tillage at all. And here is the connection with agroforestry, because one of its expressions is also with the intercropping of plants. So in some cases, because as Patrick said, the agroforestry is so diverse in general, and the combination, it's a full combination. You have just use imagination. So in many cases, it's agroforestry as well.
And I would add, if I may, that in regenerative agriculture, the focus is on the soil. And you try at the end of every season to have the soil in a better condition than it was last season. So It's an objective without an end. You try to make the system better and better and better as you progress.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Perfect. Okay, next question from René Barange. I'm not saying these names properly, so apologies. From Italy through Instagram. This is for Dagnija. Can agroforestry make a meaningful food contribution for a growing population?
It's very philosophic. And I think agroforestry is for small farms. It's for small farms because it's way how to manage land if it's not your main income and if it's your passion and when it's your hobby and when it's as additional system to deal with and then it fits to these things. And otherwise agroforestry in large scale, that is usually alley croppings or hedge growth or things like that. But when it is a very complex system, it's more like hobby and or more like lifestyle. That's my answer.
Okay, very nice. Thank you very much, Dagnija.
And I would like to add answer to first question that how agroforestry is related to permaculture. That is that, for example, in Latvia, NGO of permaculture is very active to promote agroforestry because they found that those are very close relatives.
Okay, does anybody have any else of the panel, anything else to add on this question? It's quite a very important question nowadays when we're thinking about population increases until 2050. We're estimating 10 billion people on the planet. I don't know if somebody has something else to add here.
Well, I could add to this because I was really wondering, where is agroforestry practice? It's a traditional land use system and it's practiced where? And I was very surprised some time ago. I was visiting also Guadeloupe, and I have seen also these amazing type and number of combinations of land of species in the same piece of land. So I'm definitely confident that yes, agroforestry is a land use system that can definitely be used and can definitely meet the crisis or can definitely actually meet the demands to feed the growing population. But we have to do that. This is what we're here. This is our duty. This is our obligation to provide insight, to provide guidelines and to tell people how to practice it. We're always respecting the environment. And as Patrick of course said, we have to respect the soil always, keep soil in our mind, because I think that soil has been neglected so far, but it's getting more and more attention lately. So the answer, again, also I agree with, I not agree, I just support Danila's statement that yes, it can be an answer, definitely.
Yeah. And I would like to add that it's going parallelly. Climate change, mitigation of climate change and increasing of populations and those are related, and agroforestry are solving both of problems.
I would go even further. In increasing parts of the world, you cannot grow food unless you do agroforestry. I'm just thinking back to the Sahel here, but we have more and more areas of desertification, more and more areas of dry lands. And in those areas, unless you have a lot of capital and can afford to dig wells that are hundreds of meters deep to tap the little remaining groundwater there is, your trees are your only way of actually providing the ecosystem services, the shade, the moisture, the nutrients that will help your crops to grow. Without agroforestry, there will not be any food security in the future.
If I can just add, well, most of the studies prove that for sure agroforestry is more productive per unit of area than if you grow crops or trees separately. And Actually, so the simple answer is yes, of course. Most of the politicians think that agroforestry is about extensification, but it's not. It's very intensive land use system, and it can produce much more than classical conventional agriculture.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very complete answer. Really appreciate it.
Just one more last thing, that
Please
don't
go ahead.
forget the land equivalent ratio that has been proven many times that it's much higher in agroforestry systems than in the monocrops.
Now that was the question I had, looking at if one of you could explain a bit more about over-yielding, which is a concept we often hear about. Maybe we, some of the people that are listening and that are outside the scientific area, maybe would like to understand a bit better as a concept. I don't know if one of you wants to take on that question.
Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, just what is over-yielding? Because it's very related to
Land
what you're saying.
equivalent ratio.
Okay.
Land equivalent ratio, yeah.
So the question is what the land equivalency ratio is?
What is over-yielding?
What is?
Over-yielding.
Over-yielding.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard the expression, but I assume that it has the word yielding in it and the word over in it, so it means more production. Is that what it means? Thank you. All right, so the land equivalency ratio. The land equivalency ratio is an arrestingly simple tool to understand the productivity of an agroforestry system. Picture 1 hectare of monocrop farmland and 1 hectare of tree plantation. Now, picture 1 hectare of agroforestry. How much land do you need to achieve the same productivity as your 1 hectare of agroforestry through monocrop field or monocrop wood plantation? And typically in the temperate zone, that figure would be 1.3, 1.4. So to have the same as 1 hectare productivity of agroforestry, you would need 0.8 hectares of field and 0.6 hectares of forest, for example. So 0.8 plus 0.6 is 1.4. In the humid tropics, that figure can go up to 3 or 4 or 5 because the ecosystem services are more strong and the growing season is 12 months long. But it's in the drylands and the hot drylands of the planet, in the Sahel, for example, again, that the land equivalency ratio is the highest. You have plenty of environments in which without the trees, you are not going to get any crops. And since you have neither trees nor crops, your productivity is 0. With the trees, you're going to get the trees and the crops. And if you divide something by 0, the result is infinite. So the land equivalency ratio in those environments mathematically is infinite.
Thank you very much. All right, the next question is from Patricia from Spain, asked through Instagram, and it is, where can I find information and resources about intercropping, flowers, veggies, and trees? And maybe we could expand that just a tiny bit, asking, where can we find practical information about agroforestry?
Well, the question was on me. At this moment, I think to ask where are the information is a little bit nonsense. Well, everything is on internet. However, if you would like to look, there is lots of studies, there is lots of handbooks that are available online about growing trees and crops together, but growing trees and vegetables. Especially I would recommend probably if we speak about Europe, Agroforestry Handbook for UK, there is a section for that. From the US, there is a tree crop handbook, I think, which is also very valuable. We did also one educational project, which was called AgFosi, and the web page is agroforestrysystem.eu, and there is a number of case studies, and some of them also include growing trees and vegetables together. But what I would recommend mainly is to find your farmer. I think in every country there is a number of farmers that grow trees and vegetables together. I visited farmers in southern France, in Spain, in Czech Republic, and visit that farmer and speak with them. And it's really amazing how they are able to produce excellent vegetable under the trees.
Thank you very much.
I can add to this that there are many leaflets and many innovation practices, and people can find them on the websites of our previous research projects like AgForward. And so there you can find a lot of information, but also in the Affinet practice leaflets, there are also many information and examples. So I think that we're quite happy at this stage that we had been working on some research projects that they have produced these innovation leaflets or information leaflets that people can find and get a lot of information. But at last, but not least, they can also advise the EURAF site and the local agroforestry networks. And then there are also a lot of information for that.
Indeed, and I would add the Ag Forward website, for example. But beyond that, more broadly, I would recommend that you broaden your research terms. One of the problems that we have in our world is that we have so many different words to describe what is fundamentally the same idea. Integrate perennials and think before you spray. And we have dozens of different expressions for that. We have agroforestry, climate smart farming, silver arable, silver pastoral. My favorite from Zimbabwe, farming God's way. So that means that if you Google any of these words, you're going to miss the texts and the studies that are using a different set of words. So cast your net widely. If you want one textual reference that covers a huge amount of agroforestry systems, I would recommend Eric Turnsmeyer's book, The Carbon Farming Solution, a global toolkit of perennial crops and regenerative agricultural practices for climate change mitigation and food security. It's a long title, it's a big book, but it's gorgeously illustrated and it's filled with good advice.
Perfect, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question. This is for you, Patrick, again. So this is from Anna Maria from Instagram. What economic analyses are most commonly used for agroforestry systems?
That's the $64 trillion question, that one. It's extraordinarily difficult to make an economic analysis for agroforestry, because trees take a long time to grow, and part of the economic return is going to be from the timber you get at the end of, for most agroforestry systems, part of the economic return is going to be from the timber, not for all of them. And B, because it depends so much on the context. What are you intercropping? How are you managing your intercropping system? What trees are you using? Are those trees, is there a ready market for those trees today? Maybe, but maybe in 10 years' time, the sawmill will have shut. And so when your trees are mature, your transport costs are going to be much higher. For all of these reasons, the people who ask for economic analysis of an agroforestry system usually get the same answer. Well, it depends. Beyond that, I hope that you participated in the session that we had. We had a session on economics yesterday. We had an interesting take on economics in the session on policy just this afternoon. So again, there's a number of papers out there. There's a number of studies that have looked at it. But to my great sorrow, I must say that we don't yet have the definitive answer that we can simply slam on the table of the boss of a bank saying, this works, finance it.
Very nice, thank you. Next question by Gunis Bodur. This is for Anastasia, comes from Instagram, and it is, what are the main obstacles to its widespread adoption and ways to overcome them?
I could use one word, fear or reluctancy to use something new/old, because there is a lot of proof right now that agroforestry works. It's a win-win situation, but people are reluctant to adopt it. And I'm quite happy that there's a lot of work being done lately with all the Erasmus. There have been some Erasmus projects, and there's a lot of also agroforestry projects running right now that they employ the use of living labs, and that's the basic idea. A living lab, it's an experimental, practical field where people can see if it works or not it works. So in order to convince people and overcome these obstacles, I think it's quite important that they can see that it works and they can see it in the real life, in the real field. So, one problem is the obstacles, this fear of change, the fear of the natural fear of human we have on changing a situation or changing a use that we do every day, but also the fact that in some cases you need a lot, you need a lot of technical training or technical information to apply an agroforestry system. I mean, compared to a monoculture, you know, in monoculture you just seed, plant, harvest, period. In agroforestry, you have to take into account, but that's also the beauty of agroforestry, because you have to think, and it provides also the opportunity to think and take the most out of the same piece of land.
Thank you very much.
I would just add, well, most of the farmers fear it's long term. Yeah, so they have to invest now, and lots of time they invest quite a lot of money, labor, their skills, and the results will come in the longer term. So this, in general, this longer term investment could be an obstacle. In the case of Europe, I think, and especially I'm speaking of the Czech Republic, is the obstacle of legislation, that farmers fear that they will be penalized if they grow trees on their arable land, on their pastures, and it's our job to break through those legal obstacles.
I think that puts the onus too much on the farmers. The whole way agriculture is organized is against agroforestry. When a farmer is looking for advice, he's going to be advised by an agronomist working for the state or for a private enterprise that has been trained in the use of intensive high input agriculture, not in the use of trees. When a farmer wants to invest and he goes to the bank, if he wants €500,000 to buy a tractor with GPS, artificial intelligence, DUDA, whatever, no problem. If he wants €500,000 to plant trees in his field, people are going to look at him saying, what are you crazy? If a farmer has to do his financial planning, he normally does it on a season by season thing. I buy my seeds, my inputs, my diesel, my irrigation. I grow things for a certain number of months and then I sell them. And that's the way the support system works, the subsidy system works, and the agricultural insurance systems work. If he's planting trees, he's going to have a lot of costs today, and he's going to have reduced income because he's going to take some of his land out of production to put the tree lines down. He's then going to have to wait for those trees to start growing, and that's, you know, having a tree is like having a baby. When you plant it, it's not when the job stops, it's when the job starts. So it's quite intensive in the first few years. You have to protect them from animals, you have to water them if you're in a dry zone. So over that time, you just have the costs accumulating. Then eventually, of course, the ecosystem services kick in and you start having those benefits, and so you have higher crop yields. But even later, as the trees then grow into big crowns, again you're having negative impact on your crops, and at the end you get the lottery winning moment when you can sell all the timber. It's a much more complicated financial planning process, and most farmers are not equipped to do that. They're also not educated. Most farmers went to agronomic college and they spent far more time learning how to maintain a tractor and how to read the label on a bag of pesticides than on how to plant trees. So for all of these reasons, and finally the market doesn't reward it. Since most of the public does not know what agroforestry is, slapping an agroforestry logo on a product in a supermarket does not allow you to raise products in most cases, although in England, woodland eggs are an exception to that particular rule. So for all of those reasons, we need to commend and applaud the few farmers who, despite all these enormous problems, decide, yes, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to add some trees to my field. They are pioneers. And these pioneers are more important than just for the land that they themselves are transforming, because the one thing we know is that agroforestry spreads by social diffusion. When you have farmers doing agroforestry in your neighborhood, then you can see and talk to them if you're a farmer not yet doing it, and you may be interested in trying it out. If you have no one in your neighborhood doing it, then it's going to be much harder for you to start. And for that reason, these pioneer farmers are probably the most precious asset we have as we seek to convince Europe, and more widely the world, to start adapting these extremely promising agricultural management systems.
Thank you very much. I would like to just thank the panel for doing such a good job at summarizing these very complex topics. That's quite impressive. Yeah. Thank you.
Could I add?
Of course, please go ahead.
I would like to add, when we are looking from perspective of farmer, that's different when we are looking from perspective of forester. For forester, agroforestry is additional incomes in the beginning. And for farmers, it's opposite in long term. So if I plant trees, I could not get income very in short term. But if I grow something between trees, when I planted trees, I could get income faster as normally when I do forestry. So for foresters who is going afforestate agriculture lands, it's like earlier income, not such for farmers who is doing just agriculture and they should wait for trees when they will grow up. So those are different.
Thanks a lot. Actually, we've got another question for you, Dagnija. This is from Italy. It's from René Barangi, and it's, is agroforestry compatible with intensive conventional agriculture?
I think I partly answered. It's competitive in long run, but not in short run, because some part of land are covered by trees, which will give income in later period, or which will improve traditional farming in longer period, because trees should have some time to grow up, to make shadow, and it takes some time to improve soil by growing of trees on agricultural land. So in long run, yes, but in short run, it seems like not.
Okay, thank you. Let's move ahead to the next questions, as we've got quite a few left. This is from Perni Kalehav from Denmark. This is for Bohdan. Are retailers ready to distribute agroforestry products? And if not, what do we need to do?
Well, I'm not the economist, I'm not the market specialist, but for sure I can tell they are not ready. I think most of the agroforestry farmers go different way, not through the retailers, but they will find a niche market. They will find their own, they sell directly to the consumers. They found through the boxes scheme, through the specific schemes of supporting different families. They will sell directly to the luxury restaurant and so on. Those are probably the best way how to make the best result of your very diverse agroforestry system, because then the farmer does not produce the single or two or three products, but he or she is producing a number of different products in probably high quality, but low quantity. So those specific farmers usually find direct consumers and direct selling scheme. Retailers, well, I don't know, I cannot answer this question, but hopefully if we raise awareness about agroforestry, and probably in the future there will be some scheme of certification of agroforestry, same like organic farming, we can find also a market and retailers that will probably value agroforestry products.
Perfect, thank you.
I would tend to agree with that answer, but that nevertheless raises an ethical quandary. That means that for the moment, agroforestry is largely accessible only to the elites, the rich, or those who are well educated and know where to get agroforestry products. And that is a foundational challenge that we have to tackle as we move forward, at least in the rich world. And as we see supermarkets who have to all serve the masses, to adapt their buying processes to purchase from regenerative agricultural systems, including agroforestry, rather than by price alone.
But okay, well, this is true, but as you can find your farmer and you can buy his or her products, you can find your agroforestry farmer and you can buy her or his product.
Sure, but let me push back. The average consumer has difficulty. I mean, Europe is not a nation of, we tend to think of Europe as a rich continent, and that is true, but we have a large proportion of our population which has little savings, has a really hard life, just making ends meet, life is busy. Most people do not have the time to devote the energy to select, find better, higher quality food. We have to help them get it by making it as easy as possible for them to find it in the supermarket.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question is for you, Patrick. This is from Ines Balsa from Portugal. How is the new CAP supporting or not the implementation of agroforestry?
Well, did you hear the previous session? If you did, you've already got the answer. If not, let me summarize it. Not. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. The new CAP is based on the principle of subsidiarity, which means that it's asking member states to decide broadly how it's going to spend the agricultural subsidies financed by the European Union. And it's not giving these member states directions on things that we would consider agroecology. It's giving them a menu of things they can do, some of which have of the name agroecology only the name. I mean, there's some real bullshit in there. And it's the member states who decide what they want to finance and what they don't want to finance. EURAF carried out a review of those. You can find it on our website. It's one of the policy briefs. And the results are pretty discouraging. The vast majority of member states either do not mention agroforestry in their strategic plans or mention it only once or twice in documents that are thousands of pages long. So right now, it's pretty discouraging. The policymakers have really fluffed this one.
All right, thank you. The next question is from Vicente in Spain. Comes from Instagram. This is for Anastasia. Where can one learn more with workshops and courses around Portugal, Spain, and France? So this is a bit different to the last question, right? Here looking at if people want to go a bit further in actual, maybe more formal trainings. Where can they go?
Okay. I think that I said this also in my presentation yesterday, the difference between nowadays and 10 years or even 20 years ago is that the information is available. If one wants to find some information, it's really easy to find in Google and YouTube and everything. There is so much information about agroforestry that I think it's very easy for anybody to learn, and in simple words and in simple examples and everything. So it's quite easy to get a lot of information. Besides that, I think in most of the European countries, we have representatives, the agroforestry network, agroforestry local organizations. So if they want to get more information about the events that are being organized, they can always firstly visit the EURAF site, and from the EURAF site to find the local, in each country, agroforestry local organization, and then get in contact with the people of agroforestry people in each country, and then from there they can get all the information about all the any type of activities they have. So it's very easy nowadays to get this information, and it's actually realized through the workshops, through all the living labs, and actually I can say the opposite. We are trying to find people to, whenever we have an event, we have a stakeholder meeting, so we're trying to find as many people as possible. So we're spreading the word with using all the media, like Facebook, like Instagram, like everything. We have, personally, we haven't used yet the TikTok, but I don't think it's good for this type of, but if we have to, we will use it as well. So.
Thank you very much.
Facebook is for oldies like you and me, Anastasia.
I didn't want to say, but
I would fully agree with Anastasia. Probably during last decades, I think in Europe, no education materials were. But during last decades, the number of educational materials for farmers, for interested people has grown. They are freely available online. There were lots of projects for what already mentioned, Agfosi, Agrofi, and so on, Affinet, and so on. So there is lots of online. I would, in each country, I would first also contact the EURAF branch, the national branch of EURAF, and ask those people if they are organizing some workshops, conferences, and so on. That is the best way, I think, to get not only online information, but probably to visit some workshops or conferences.
Thanks a lot. Let's go to the next question from Roman Skaitani, Italy, comes from Instagram. This is for Dagnija. How should we share scientific knowledge with farmers?
Attend farmer meetings with invited lectures. When I go into farmer meetings and I meet them, I talk with them like normal person, not like scientists from somewhere, like some professor or senior researcher. When I belong them, when I have copy together with them, we could talk as normal persons, and it helps a lot And when I organize meetings and invite farmers, they thought that, oh, it's organized by foresters, it's for foresters. But when I coming as invited lecturer, it works, and it works really well. And I would like to say that agroforestry are also adopted as biodiversity, as habitat, but it's not yet adopted and accepted as a way for farming. And I hope it will change, but because in Latvia, when we are doing some innovation, it took 10 years to invent it in real life, as we started to do it very actively in 2015. So it just 2-3 years left.
Okay, thank you. The next question is a bit more practical. It's from Adam Varg, asked on Instagram. This is for Bohdan. How can agroforestry solutions support vineyards?
I don't know if it's a good question on me. In Central Europe, we have some vineyards, but probably if Christian Duprat is here in the audience, it would be a question for him. But I have fortunately also visited and he showed me the vineyards in Restanclier, and they proved that, well, historically, vineyards were intercropped and wine is a trailing. So they were used as support for vineyards, but through the intensification, of course, and through the focus on productivity of vineyards, all trees were removed. And we find out now that probably we can again plant trees and use agroforestry in vineyards. And especially now with climate change, there is a number of studies that support the idea that trees, through the climate change, can make better microclimate. Especially they can protect the vineyard from the early frost, or in the hot summer they can protect from hot weather. There is, of course, a trade-offs that the trees, of course, compete with vineyards for nutrients and water. So the highest competition is near the trees. However, the overall productivity usually is not compromised. Studies confirm. And sometimes even the quality of the grapes and of the wine is better. So it's also a solution, I think, for vineyards.
Fantastic, thank you. Patrick, the next question is for you, but I feel like you've already answered it in your previous question, in your previous answer. So I'll just ask it and let me know if there's anything you'd like to add. This is from Perny from Denmark, asked through Twitter. Are consumers interested in products from regenerative farming?
I think the answer is that a subset of consumers are interested in regenerative farming, and that subset is growing as the impact of climate change becomes stronger and stronger, and as people become more aware of the threats to our food supply. I haven't seen any studies looking at this question very recently, i.e. after the war after Russia's invasion of Ukraine started. But I would not be surprised if more and more people are now asking themselves, how are we going to deal with the farming system if diesel inputs, etc., are becoming more expensive or destroying the soil, etc. Now, don't get our hopes up. Whether there's a small, I would be very surprised if this was more than 20% of the population, even in the richest, best educated countries. It's probably less elsewhere.
Perfect, thank you very much. Okay, next question for Anastasia. This is from Zuzana from Czech Republic, asked through Instagram. Is there a competition between crop and tree? So I imagine they're talking about in agroforest systems through intercropping, alley cropping. Maybe we can give a bit more context.
Okay, I have the magic word that I teach my students to use. It says it depends. It really depends. And this is what we do. And this is the difference actually. Not difference, the characteristic of agroforestry. You have to know your tools, and the tools are the trees and the crops. So that's the beauty, that's the basic idea of agroforestry, to use this type of combination that do not impose any type of competition, the one to the other. And not only pose any competition, but even work together in a synergic type of collaboration to get the most out of the land. So the answer is that normally, no, it shouldn't be any. And actually also that's the basic idea of trees, because trees are usually we use deep-rooted species, or with the management of the species from the beginning of the establishment of the crop, of the agroforestry plot. So the trees are forced actually to use the deepest soil layers. And so it's like they create a protective nest. And so all the nutrients and everything that they leach from the upper crop, they're being actually trapped and from the trees, used, and then all these nutrients are being recycled and used again from the crop. So normally, no, it shouldn't be. That's the point of agroforestry management, to make sure that you don't have any type of competition, but on the contrary, you have the maximum and optimum type of collaboration between trees and crops. And there's a lot of literature on this, and it's quite available. And we are working on it. And I think that a lot of research projects that are being going on, it's actually emphasizing this, trying to test this type of combination, and the results are really amazing. And as I said, it really depends where you are, what the climatic conditions are, what species are, and of course, what soil is.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
If I can add, I would say it's very site specific, and for sure the trees and the crops will compete. They use the same resources. Yeah, but the management, your design, how you care about the trees, how you care about the crops, what crops you choose for this. So it's about the knowledge. It's about try, probably, and error to minimize those competition and to maximize the benefit of growing trees and crops together. We have some experiences. Of course, you could expect if you do alley cropping and there will be cereals, that the lines near the trees will be probably the yield will be lower. And we experienced that, probably Jan Weger from my colleague experienced that, we measured that. However, on the other hand, the quality, the bakery quality of the wheat that we grew there was better. So those are the trade-offs. RFS, in the tree lines, we also grew potatoes. And potatoes, the yield were better under the trees than outside the trees. So it's very specific, and you cannot just generalize that.
Yeah, and I would add to that a lot of work on that has been done, which is simply not accessible. I'll give you an example. We heard this morning from Vasil about the windbreak systems in Ukraine. These windbreak systems were set up across the wheat growing areas of the former Soviet Union in Soviet times. So there were a lot of them in Central Asia. Huge number of studies were done in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, about the impact on yields, the impact on protein quality, the valorization of the various tree species, the interaction between the wheat and different tree species. Now, that research exists in Russian, on paper, at the University of Tashkent. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's actually digitized it, nobody's translated it and made it available on ResearchGate or Google Scholar or whatever it is. Because agroforestry is a system that had been in use for decades before the word agroforestry was even coined, that makes finding that old research even more difficult, but also even more promising, because that research was done at a time when you did not have confounding factors of technology or confounding factors of chemistry, for example. So I would warmly encourage those of you out there who actually have links in your universities, who people who are interested in the history of science, to gather that data, those papers, before the mice get them, and the mice are beginning to get them.
And it's a good opportunity, actually, Patrick, to make a collection, because this is a knowledge, this is our cultural heritage, and we need to preserve it for the future. It's our duty to do that. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Let's we'll go to the last two questions. before we close this session. This is next question is from Haiza. It's asked through Instagram. This is for Bohdan. How many tree species and how should they be organized on the landscape to optimize farm biodiversity?
Well, I think the answer is easy. The more species, the better. Yeah, of course, this is the core of biodiversity. The more species you have, the more diverse is the system. And of course, if you use more different species with different structure, with different height, with different shape, then the more heterogeneous is the vegetation, more complex is the vegetation, and it attracts the other biodiversity like insects, mammals, birds, and whatsoever. So of course, the more species, the more biodiverse. Well, but we are speaking about farmland, so it's usually much more simplified. And it is a question if this really complex system the farmer is able to manage. So for doing that, you need experience, you need practice, and you have to have knowledge. Yeah, so it's of course not easy, but I think the answer is the more species you use, the more diversity you attract.
Is there like a number that we can provide in terms of percentage tree cover on a landscape? It's a huge generalization, slightly annoying to ask, but is there something we can give as a target?
I don't want to answer those questions, because if we start to speak about percentages, how much % of land should be covered by trees and how much by crops, we are a little bit falling into the trap, you know. So I think, and I don't want to avoid that. However, it's very site specific. It would be different if you are on arable land and probably there will be intensive farming and you want to replace monoculture of wheat with relatively simple agroforestry system, alley cropping, where you use 3-4 species. It would be very beneficial for the landscape. But if you are in a very beautiful landscape of southern France, and so if you want to increase biodiversity, of course, you have to use some more complex agroforestry system.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. It's actually a meaningless question almost, because it depends so much on the context. If you're in the humid tropics, then you know, in a hectare you can have 40 different tree species and it'll be great. If you're high up in the Andes, or if you're in the Finnish Arctic, you'll have maybe 3 tree species you can work with. It's so context dependent. And it also means on the trade-offs you're willing to make. I mean, you can boost biodiversity, and up to a certain extent that biodiversity will boost your income. But eventually the biodiversity takes over, as it were, and reduces the amount of useful stuff you can sell. There's also economic context issues. If in your neighborhood you only have a guy interested in buying oil palm, the fact that you're also growing 15 different other products in your gorgeous oil palm smallholder agroforestry system is not going to make you any money, because you cannot find buyers for anything except the oil palm. So the answer to that kind of question is always going to be extraordinarily dependent on the context of every single individual farm. So while I agree with you, Bohdan, that of course, the more species you have, the more biodiversity you have, if we look in the real world where people have to make a living, there is going to be some trade-off that every farmer is going to have to manage differently.
Thank you so much. So this is the last question for Patrick from Forma in Spain through Instagram. What materials can be produced for furniture manufacturing in an agroforestry farm?
I assume the question is beyond timber.
Beyond timber.
Well, resins, for example, resins to make varnishes. There are some fantastic resins that come out of Indonesia that are coming from trees. You can have wool and various animal products like leather that you can use in your furniture making to make the seats of chairs or things like that. You can have tinctures and coloring agents from a large number of different species that you can intercrop with trees, or that are themselves trees that you can use to create high quality coloring agents for furniture making. So there's really a lot of stuff you can, practically the only thing you cannot get out of an agroforestry system for furniture making is screws.
Fantastic. If we could give a big round of applause for the panelists for answering all these questions. Thank you so much. So we've got a basket that I'm gonna ask Anastasia to select a name from, and this will be the winner of the prize of the product.
Okay. Me? Okay. Okay, and no cheating? No picking? Okay. All right, so, okay, so here it says, oh.
So this is Carl Sheard from the Blue Pig Farm in France. Instagram is Blue Pig Farm, and the question actually hasn't been answered now. We didn't manage to get there, but we're going to make sure, we're going to do our best that we answer the questions in the document. But yes, Carl, we're going to get in touch with you, and you're going to be winning. You will win the prize of the cheese and the honey, etc., from the pilot projects. We've also got a cheese, a quarter of cheese for all of the panelists. We've got just over here, and we're going to cut it up later on and give it to you as well to thank you for your time. Pecorino cheese, fantastic cheese. And yeah, so if you want to know anything, if you want to find out anything else about AGROMIX, please go on agromixproject.eu. That's the website where we'll have the frequently asked questions, and we'll have the document readily downloadable. And yeah, just wanted to have a big thank you to the panelists, a big thank you also to the EURAF organizers for this fantastic conference, and to AGROMIX for organizing this event. So thank you very much, everybody. Also to you guys for coming. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dimitri, for this excellent presentation. So a big applause for Dimitri as well.